Oh man, it's getting more and more absurd in here. Hello everybody. Some of you may have noticed that Germany is taking a very unique path when it comes to our energy sourcing. On the 15th of April 2023, we are going to phase out our last 3 nuclear power plants, despite the fact we're in an energy related crisis, where for example the street lights are automatically turning off at 11 PM. Despite all of this, our government is scrapping our last remaining nuclear power plants, and wanting to run an entire country on sunshine and wind alone. They boycott gas from Russia despite having over 50% coming from them before the sanctions kicked in, and are outright obsessed with their ideology, and people like Scholz are doing nothing to stop it all from happening. You might think the German government really can't be this mentally retarded, thinking they can save the world climate by ruining our country, but yes, they are this mentally retarded to think that. Our political clowns are justifying the phasing out of the nuclear plants with the fact that they are so unsafe, and that people are afraid of a German Chernobyl. Yeah. This is one of those green nuclear physicists. Here's Robert Habeck, our green economy and climate minister, as well as vice chancellor. He is one of the main people responsible for the shutdown of our power plants, and he said a lot of crap during his time of being minister. Enough to make a 2-hour movie. But here's an interview from a Danish TV program, explaining why he and his country are actually going this way. Luckily it's in English so I don't need to translate.
Talking about only this winter, but also onward, because you're prolonging the coal industry. But let me just finish, because I just wanted to ask you, because nuclear energy isn't as damaging as the coal. We know that it has a minimal carbon footprint compared to coal, and you just prolonged the exit of coal, but said no to the nuclear energy that is being phased out next month. Why so?
Well, this is depends on how you see it. First, I would always say that if something goes wrong with nuclear energy, then it has a very damaging effect, remembering Fukushima and also Chernobyl. So the decision made in Germany was due to the threat of nuclear energy. Angela Merkel and the liberals, and of course the Greens, agreed to it, but it was an overall decision of all the German parties that we phase out of nuclear energy taken 10 years ago. And it was the right decision.
Even though it would have been better for the climate?
Well, you can't compare climate. I mean, if you do that, then of course nuclear energy has a lower carbon footprint, but I mean, what are we talking about?
He actually admitted that his climate neutral energy policy is a complete botch, and that it is actually less harmful if he were to run nuclear power plants than coal-fired power plants. And of course he's afraid that something could go wrong. But only a week later, he said this. And I have to ask if this is just sheer stupidity or blatant mockery.
Die Ukraine wird an der Atomkraft festhalten, das ist völlig klar, das ist auch in Ordnung, solange die Dinger sicher laufen. Die sind ja gebaut.
Well, that's what I call an exemplary and competent economics minister. The world's best we've ever had. Okay, seriously now. Does this fuck have any idea what he's talking about? Our power plants are unsafe and thus they need to be phased out, while nuclear power plants in the Ukraine, they are completely okay. The German Technical Monitoring Association, or TÜV for short, has actually confirmed that our nuclear plants are one of the safest. And by the way, Habeck, how on earth do you actually want to know how safe the nuclear power plants in Ukraine are? By the way, I just googled what the most dangerous nuclear power plant in the world is, and what I found was the power plant in Zaporizhzhia. And in what country is it located? Oops. And where exactly is Chernobyl? Oops. And where is a war happening right now that most of these people in charge are not really willing to end? Oopsie hoopsie do. But it is fully okay, they keep running. As long as the operation's safe, they're already built anyway. That's an interesting thing to hear. And here's another point that he and his Greens completely ignore because they're a bunch of imbeciles. Even if we shut down our nuclear power plants for the fear of deadly radioactivity, there are countries around us like France, the Netherlands, the Czech Republic, and also Sweden who are still using them, or even actually building entirely new ones. Poland does this also, 5 countries with nuclear power plants right next to us. France, for example, has 56 of these things. And if a reactor in one of those would go into meltdown, which is just as unlikely as seeing a release date for GTA 6 by tomorrow, even then the fallout wouldn't just stop at the national border, and would in fact spread to us. In short, it's complete and utter bullshit, and anyone is laughing at us and our energy mismanagement driven by irrationality and panic. Chernobyl happened because not just the technology was already obsolete by 1986, human error and Soviet quality control also played a role. The plant in Fukushima was damaged by a tsunami. And now we come into play. Do we live in a tsunami danger zone? Are we using ancient remnants of the Soviet era without significant security and trained personnel? Nope. And yes, I admit, these 2 accidents were devastating. Especially in Japan, many people died during that day. But did these people die because of the nuclear accident? Yes. One person died because of lung cancer in 2018. 7 years after said accident. And here's another thing. Did I mention they're actually not that bad as their reputation suggests, and are in fact even better for the climate? For which the government wants to outlaw heaters running on gas and oil, making people go into debt, crashing their houses' values and possibly even make them homeless? I don't know, but here is what a nuclear power plant emits of CO2, and here just to understand what a coal-fired power plant emits quote unquote, highly dangerous CO2, which we are supposed to minimize. You said that yourself, Habeck, so what is your solution to this problem? What would be a great substitute for this so-called high-risk technology? Let's talk about wind energy. This is one of those things they want and well, they're shit. The Greens have actually figured it out by themselves that to power an entire country, in this case the 4th biggest industrial nation in the world with wind energy, they need a lot of these things. And I mean, a lot. Entire forests are being flattened. And Habeck was even thinking about overriding nature conservation laws, so that hundreds of thousands of these wind turbines can be set up. The problem, however, is that at least 1,200 or so are needed to produce as much energy as one nuclear power plant could, and then it only works when the wind blows. And I'm far from done. What happens if one of these wind turbines are reaching the end of their life cycle? I can tell you exactly what will happen. Used turbines are actually buried into a hole, because you cannot recycle them, due to the fact that the materials used can't be separated, at least that easily. Is this what you call sustainable? And also, what do you mean with renewable energy? You actually never explained it to us. And the same thing applies to solar energy. It's all fine, as long as the sun is shining. It doesn't shine, which it does not pretty much half of the day, because guess what? We have nights. It will not make any difference whether you install 5, 50, or 50,000 of these things, and these things have to be disposed of also when they're old or broken. And don't get me started on batteries, which would be needed to even keep the energy. This is now sustainable. But guess what? Super mind-blowing. Things like cobalt and nickel are also not infinite. It needs to be shipped, and by the way, let's not forget that some miners refer to child labor to even get that shit out. Remember that when you get into your Mercedes EQS. Oops, I got a question for you greenies. Are you really suggesting that these things can run an entire industrial nation? Even an uneducated moron like me knows that this is an impossible task to do. But hey, don't you worry, because Habeck assures us that there will be no problems after the nuclear plants are history. And well, he might be right about that. Because almost every well-known company in Germany has already left and is relocating their factories to somewhere else, and every small company is going bankrupt due to the increased prices, and not just in energy. This will lead to unemployment. People will lose their livelihoods. Fathers or mothers cannot afford food for their families, and anyone's gonna be poor as fuck. But hey, at least we're doing something for the climate. At just 2% of global CO2 emissions. The Greens are calling this progress. And yes, this is a progress, but not a good one. In fact, we are all witnessing Germany's economic suicide, and the Greens are the grave diggers. Everything that has been built up over the decades is going to shit, just because some children's book authors, university dropouts, kitchen hands and trampoline hoppers want to impose their ideology on people at any price and call it the future. Oh, and I forgot to mention one specific person. Thanks Merkel for getting this thing rolling in the first place.
Danke Merkel! Du Arschloch!
By the way, before I end this video to get drunk while listening to ZZ Top, this is their idea of a portal to the future. A fucking porta potty.
You serious?
Here's another big important addendum that just came in. Right after they want to phase out the last 3 remaining nuclear plants, by the way against the will of the vast majority of the German citizens, they don't want to leave it at just a simple shutdown. No. Our government led under the Greens, they are going even further by using acid to destroy these plants to prevent any reactivation, rendering them useless. This is how far they go. And all this during times where people are already struggling to pay for pretty much anything. I am out of words to even describe this madness that this crap heap avalanche disaster of a government is doing right now in a halfway objective way. To be totally honest, I would take Chernobyl any day over this reckless government. Fuck the Greens.